If you look on the back of a dollar bill, you will see a pyramid topped by the all-seeing eye of God, the Eye of Horus. Why is this symbol on the back of a US dollar, a country supposedly founded as a Christian nation? That's because it wasn't. It was founded as a nation that would guarantee religious liberty for all, but lately many are, apparently, trying to rewrite history and create a Christian theocracy. Based on the symbolism, motifs, and the writings of the Founding Fathers, the United States owes more to ancient Egypt and Hellenistic philosophy than to Christian theology. Many of the nation's founders were members of Masonic orders and infused much of the order's philosophy into the ideals and aesthetics espoused with the founding documents, for example, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
Hotep fam, Hetipu and Namaste. I see the divinity that is in you. I see the Christ that is you. I see you. Once again back, it's me, the alchemistic Minister Imhotep. I am the one who comes in peace, and I'm here to share an urban, inspirational, metaphysical message of truth to touch people, provoke thought, and prayerfully transform lives. As you saw in the opening video segment, there are more and more people proudly, loudly, and arrogantly saying that the United States is a Christian nation. And they're dead wrong in this declaration and proclamation because, well, they say that this country was founded by Christians for Christians. So everybody else practicing something different other than Christianity, a different religion, or heaven forbid, no religion at all, well, dudes, you guys need to take several seats and recognize where you are, because, this is the US of A. They're clearly confused and revisionist in their history, conveniently ignoring that constitutional principle called the separation of church and state. We don't live in a theocracy, y'all. That separation was made for a reason. We wanted that religious liberty and freedom so that all people who came here, who migrated here, would have the opportunity to worship in the way that they would like and not be disrespected. They're even more confused in thinking that there was anything Christian about displacing the people who were occupying this land. There were people here before, we came before Columbus, and there were other folks that were here too. Occupying this land formerly known as Turtle Island, while also kidnapping, importing other people to enslave, dehumanize, and exploit as free labor for centuries. That's what the country was built on, this free labor. Wasn't it Jesus, though, who talked about setting the captives at liberty, setting those who are enslaved free? That's what Jesus talked about when he came and declared his mission, when he read from the scroll in the temple, what he quoted from Isaiah, what he wanted to do, and that's what was part of his mission, to bring about some justice. Jesus' mission wasn't just about love, that feel good. It was also about justice. And they're calling this new backward ideology Christian nationalism. Here in America, it's American Christian nationalism. But the reality is that it is neither patriotic, because it does nothing to support, uplift, or uphold the values of America, nor is it remotely Christian in any way. And if by Christian, we mean Christ-like, upholding the values espoused by Jesus and his teachings. Are we sticking to those, the words of Jesus to Christ? And that's what we would call Christians. Not just performative rhetoric, not just those actions that make you feel good, that make you feel proud and lift you up over somebody else. Those things that you do out in public, that's puffery. As opposed to Jesus said, if you do any of those things, do them in quiet and secret, but not like the Pharisees who make a show or make a performance out of it. So what are we talking about when we talk about Christian? That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how Jesus actually lived, taught, preached, and encouraged his disciples and the followers of the way to model his behavior. Also, this nationalistic movement is by no means isolated to the U.S. Its largely bigoted and narrow ideology is also spouted by right-wing populist and militia movements around the globe, from our northern neighbor Canada down to Brazil, Finland, Russia, Scotland, South Africa, and many more. They're all forming the same type of ideology, trying to separate themselves, isolate themselves, retrench, and they have this xenophobic idea about anyone who is different from themselves. So they have that sort of common denominator amongst them. These adherents also have a weird fusion of misguided religious fundamentalism, as I said, that xenophobic isolationism, a distrust of science. We saw that during the COVID lockdown. Now, of course, there was many overreactions, but we're trying to figure this thing all out. But to totally distrust science, there are even flat earthers, all sorts of folks that are conspiracy theorists. I'm a conspiracy theorist too. My conspiracy is that the universe is working on my accord, trying to work things out for me, and that's the conspiracy that I align with. But these people also have an inherent belief in racial hierarchy. We'll see that expressed in some of the things. It comes out. It's not always overt, but you'll see it. Social conservatism, situational freedom of speech. It's okay to talk about platforms having freedom of speech so they can spread any misinformation, disinformation that they would like. But when there is another point of view, then all of a sudden they get down and start saying censorship and everything else. And of course, they are only liberal in their interpretation of the Second Amendment in order to justify access to weapons of assault weapons that have no business on the street because it's not for a militia. We don't have that anymore. We don't need that, a citizen militia, because we have an organized military. We have the National Guard. We have these defenses in place, and it's okay to have weapons to hunt, to protect your home and your family and all these things. But I don't think anybody needs to be running around with AR-15s and other assault armaments just because. And most of these groups whiningly express some sense of white grievance, that they've been wronged in somehow, that the white race has been wronged in some way, as if they've had something taken away from them, and they're armed and ready to take it back. Believe me, folks, they're ready to take it back, whatever that is that they're taking back. They're ready to grab it, whether it's the nation, the heritage, the opportunities that they think that may have been taken from them. They're even willing to kick out migrants because they're saying jobs are being taken, but none of them want to do any of the jobs that are being taken. We're going to see how this works out. But anyway, they think that something has been taken, and they said, or that they are being displaced in some way, and they are chanting, "We will not be replaced." Well, I think your genetics will probably have you replaced because your birth rate is low. Your DNA is subordinate. It's not the dominant. It's recessive. That's the word I was looking for. And so those recessive traits in some way will have you possibly being replaced. It's biological inevitability, as there is so-called browning of America. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing these reactions to. A lot of that is a pushback to that, not an embracing of us coming together as the Baha'i faith teaches, but this sort of pushing back in somewhat of a survivalist mode, and I can understand it. The irony is that these same people who are fighting about not being replaced are the ones who are descended from the colonizers who came in and displaced so many of the indigenous people around the world. And they are using these this trumped up thing. They've hijacked the term critical race theory from its higher academic theoretical context to talk about, societal systemic things, and they're saying that this is being taught to elementary kids. What are they talking about? They're just using a broad brush to whitewash out any attempts to teach history that is actually based on, how about this? History. That's a novel idea. Hey, the reason they're giving for not wanting to, talk about the truth of history, what happened in Rosewood, what happened in Coed in Florida, what happened over in Greenwood, and we can go on and on about all those instances that they're termed race riots, but it wasn't the black people that were rioting. Those were massacres in many instances. And so they want to cover those terms and soften it so that no white children will be upset by the teaching of this truth. Now, we don't want anybody uneasy about telling history, but wasn't it how do you think those people who were enslaved, that were categorized legally, officially, as 3/5 of a man and considered chattel, less than human, I think they might have been a little uneasy and upset about that situation as well. Yes, the truth of man's inhumanity to man should be upsetting to all. But that's how we face it, confront it, the trauma of it, because there's trauma that happened to the victim, but there's something that also happens to the victimizer. They take on some of that as well. And so we all need to deal with that openly, honestly, because it happened. And we can't sweep that under the rug, but it has to be dealt with. As we've heard about that post-traumatic slave trauma disorder. Again, that happened to the enslaved and the enslaver as well, that those actions that transpired have to be addressed, compensated for in some sort of way. What that is, we at least have to be open to the conversation about it, and then maybe we can all get past it in some way that's beneficial for us all, mutually beneficial. It's time we decide as a nation which values are we actually going to espouse and commit to. Values that supersede allegiance to party. We've had enough partisanship. We see how it has fractured and factionalized the country into the left and the right and red and blue, Democrat and Republican. We got the left wing and the right wing. And here's the truth. They're all a part of the same bird. But in order for that bird to get anywhere, left wing and right wing have to work together in conjunction, in harmony. We got to figure this thing out, or else we're going to keep going around in circles and circles that inevitably leads to our demise and destruction. Hopefully, we can get back to putting country and constitution first, get around and out of these cults of personalities and of partisanship, and then maybe we can figure this thing out together, bipartisan or even more parties, which might be the answer, that we need more than just these two parties that make it a binary choice. We need some real alternatives, not just these ones who come in as spoilers, but some real alternatives. You know how they do it over in England. There's some other parties that, not just the main ones, but there are other ones who actually have a chance of winning. And perhaps with that political ideological diversity, we can have some real solutions that are discussed, debated, contemplated, and eventually settled upon. And hopefully we will get back to being able to agree on basic truths and being able to acknowledge the reality that sometimes we lose. Losing is a reality. I mean, we watch sporting events and there are people that lose. We can't descend into alternative facts that are situationally flexible to justify our refusing to accept the truth that we all know is a truth. 63 court decisions said it was a truth. Election was not stolen. There was no need to have an uprising and all those sorts of things on January 6th. It was what it was. And then all of a sudden, this year, when the election turned out in your favor, all of a sudden all of that stuff went away. Man, that must have been the most sorry election fixing ever if they weren't able to do it again. It's okay to acknowledge a loss. Every athletic competition we watch has a winner and a loser. And we expect a minimum level of graciousness and sportsmanship, win or lose. What are we instilling in ourselves and our children when it's accepted to petulantly pout and lie that you could only have lost because the other team cheated? Maybe you just lost. Maybe they outscored you, outplayed you, that you stumbled, you fumbled, or had turnovers or something. Maybe they were just better. I mean, we wouldn't stand for that type of childishness of refusing to admit a loss. We wouldn't stand for that, accept it on a field of play or a court, and yet, for some reason, we allow it to be normalized for the person who is now about to re-enter the highest office in the land. Really, y'all? Is that what we're talking about here? Be a Republican. Be the best Republican. Be a real Republican, not a rhino. But I thought Republicans were about fiscal responsibility, and conserving that. But I haven't seen any ideology that aligns with conservatism. I've seen demagoguery. I've seen opportunism, and I've seen those sorts of things. Be a Democrat, but don't try to be a whitewashed Republican. Be a Democrat. Go all in. Be an independent. Be Green Party. Be nothing. Be whatever. It's all up to you. You make the choice. But whatever you decide, whatever you choose to be, or whoever you align with or don't align with, just maintain a modicum of integrity. That's all, folks. Then, because democracy is an interesting thing. It's an experiment. We're at a crossroads with this experiment because democracy requires an educated electorate. And we're not even a true full democracy because it's not one vote for one person and all of a sudden that popular vote wins. We've seen where that hasn't been the case on a few occasions, that elected by the Electoral College. We are, in fact, a representative democracy. And that's how that can happen. At the time when the Constitution was formulated, at the Founding Fathers, when we talked about that 3/5 compromise, the only people who could actually vote, who had a say, were white male landowners, property owners. That's who this thing was set up for. It wasn't set up for Christians. It was set up for capitalism. But then it allowed racism to infect capitalism, and racism isn't good for capitalism. The whole thing doesn't make sense. A dollar should be green no matter who has it. But we allowed racism to infect our capitalism. Maybe we will eventually start to value people over profit and live out what Jesus stated about what happens to the least among us happening to him. He prioritized how we treat those who are marginalized. Jesus didn't come with this mamby-pamby love thing. He came, as I said, about justice, to bring about the justice. We can't let our greatness, the nation's greatness, the world's greatness be determined by how the 1% ball out. The 1% who have money that they can't spend in 1,000 lifetimes. And yet we have people who can barely get by, making subsistence wages and have to strike in order to get those things. Is that really what we want to be? Shouldn't we brag about how the least among us, our poorest, have more than you have over there? That should be our bragging rights. And we can do it. We can do that for all. We can say the people of this planet have everything that they need. And I don't know about you extraterrestrials up there, but we Earth, our people are taken care of. We look out for them. That's where we want to be. We can't allow just the billionaires to have opportunity. And that's what it seems like more and more recently, that you have to be a billionaire to be a cabinet member. Are we an oligarchy now? Seems like we might be descending into that. Maybe, just maybe, we'll start to live out some of what we have printed on our currency. You know, like, in God we trust. Because do we really? If so, wouldn't we seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness? Righteousness is right thinking. Because it's right thinking that leads to right actions. And how about the other statement that we have on our currency? E pluribus unum. That means from many one. In other words, with all of our differences, we come together to form one nation. And those differences can be religious, ideological, and guess what? Even language. Because that's what diversity means. And when and why did diversity, in other words, like inclusion, equity, when did those become bad words or progressive even? Isn't progress supposed to be a good thing? Wasn't that diversity America's superpower when we talk about the melting pot? Wasn't it supposed to be America's superpower? These diversity of opinions, these different thoughts allow us to have access to different ideas so that we can come to the best solutions. Are we now in some bizarro universe that inverts the meaning of everything? The next several years are going to be mad interesting, folks. They really are. We need to stay alert to shenanigans on either side and be intentional in creating paths forward that consider the many and not just a few. We must stay conscious and considerate. Stay alert and vigilant. Stay aware and focused. We must stay woke. Yeah, I know that's a bad word too. But fam, think a new thought about your possibilities, our possibilities, and I'll see you back here soon. Just remember to, if you feel like it, and I encourage you to, I hope you do, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you can stay informed and aware of upcoming episodes. As I said, it's going to be interesting the next several years as we conclude 2024 and move into 2025. I'm Minister Imhotep, and I wish you peace, prosperity, and power as we go into that unknown of 2025. Fam, just stay faithful, stay hopeful.